174 hours of cinematics, a 2 million word script, and over 600 spells and abilities. These are just a few of the incredible elements in the upcoming game Baldur's Gate 3. Welcome to Game List Plus, my name is Josh, and these are the top 10 mind-blowing Baldur's Gate 3 elements. Starting off at number 10, massive cinematics and story. Baldur's Gate 3 has more than 174 hours of cinematics. That mind-blowing length is roughly 3 times the length of the entirety of Game of Thrones. Of course, you won't see all of that in a single playthrough, and in fact, you can't possibly see every last moment as the game has so many branching paths that you can wander down. In Baldur's Gate 3, you will gather your party and return to the Forgotten Realms in a tale of fellowship and betrayal, sacrifice and survival, and the lure of absolute power. The player character and their companions are infected with a mind flayer tadpole and must find a way to remove it before it transforms them into a mind flayer themselves. The story consists of nearly 2 million words in the script that are either spoken or written. Yes, 2 million. That's roughly 3 times the dialogue of all 3 of the Lord of the Rings novels combined. One of the game's writers said that the game story is collaborative, that in essence you tell the story together with the writers, which seems like a strange concept, but it makes sense in the amount of dialogue possibilities and branches within the story that are possible. Basically, the writers are the game master in a similar way that there is always a game master in the tabletop version of Dungeons & Dragons. The ship is being steered in a direction, but you are making a lot of the decisions along the way. When asked what the overall theme is in the game, one of the writers stated that it is largely about trust and how the world trusts you. Ultimately, you can become the last hope of the city in a bad way or in a good way. You can choose to be good or evil in the end based on your choices. There are so many ways that it could go, it's almost overwhelming. Or is it refreshing? You can play as you want and be whoever you want and play with a friend at the same time while both of your stories unfold at the same time. Coming in at number 9, extensive playtime. This game boasts 75 to 100 hours of playtime on a standard playthrough. If you're trying to find everything, plan on playing 200 hours. If that wasn't enough, there are so many choices and options, the replayability level is insane. Let me put this in perspective. Standard playthrough is over 4 full 24-hour days of playing. Being a completionist, it's going to take you 8 full 24-hour days to play all of this. If you had the time to play this every single day for 3 to 4 hours, it will take you at least a month to complete just one playthrough. Even if your human body, brain, and mind could cram 12 hours a day of this game in as a completionist, it would still take you 16 days of that to play through it once. This game is about to ruin some lives. You should probably apologize to the people close to you in your life before you start playing. At number 8, adaptive soundtrack. The music evolves and changes in real time based on your decisions in the game. The music goes deep and dark as it reflects what is happening on screen. The award-winning composer Borislav Slavov specializes in adaptive video game music. He's pretty much the go-to guy in this type of music composition. He's even been a guest lecturer on the subject at various universities, music academies, and soundtrack festivals in Europe. The soundtrack is divided into 3 main categories: ambient for atmosphere in the game world, battle to create a sense of excitement and tension during combat, and character themes to personally represent the different characters in the game. The soundtrack is praised by critics and fans, being called epic, beautiful, and hauntingly atmospheric. It's even been nominated for several awards, including the BAFTA Games Award for Best Music. The music to me, even from the trailers, gives that deep, immersive, and magical quality. I get that fuzzy feeling that I get from the incredible soundtrack in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. This is one of the elements in the game that I look forward to the most. At number 7, deep character creation. Baldur's Gate 3 has an unprecedented character creation system. Okay, get this. So you have 12 class options: Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard. Your class will give you specific abilities and attributes throughout the game. For example, Druids are the only class that can talk to animals directly as you play. Then you have 11 race options, which include Elf, Tiefling, Drow, Human, Githyanki, Dwarf, Half-Elf, Halfling, Gnome, Half-Orc, and the incredibly well-detailed Dragonborn. And yes, female dwarfs can have beards, and they should. Even further, the game features 31 subraces on top of the 11 races, with 46 subclasses branching out of 12 classes. And if all that wasn't enough for you, on top of all of that is multiclassing, which allows you to put an additional class on top of your first one. Not everything works well together though, so it's a great way to experiment, and it allows full respecking so you can get everything just how you like it. That's just characteristics. The actual visual appearance of the character is vast as well. You can control hair, skin color, age, horn color, piercings, scars, freckles, vitiligo, pronouns, piercings, and even heterochromia, which is eyes of 2 different colors. Okay, as you can see, this game has an insane amount of detail in your creation, allowing you to make the character truly yours. At number 6, historic D&D gameplay. Dungeons & Dragons was the original role-playing game in tabletop and personal imagination form, so this is basically the mother of all video game RPGs. Baldur's Gate 3 is played using Dungeons & Dragons. I see why people just say D&D. Baldur's Gate 3 is played using Dungeons & Dragons rules, so players create their character, navigate the fantasy world, and engage in collaborative storytelling, guided by the game master, or the writers in this case. A player rolls a 20-sided die, or the D20, and that determines the success or failure of your character's actions. As with the original Dungeons & Dragons tabletop game, there is a voice within the game that speaks to you as you play, who, in essence, is the game master.
You approach the dying monster. This is the thing that abducted you. You could end its life here and now.
Her voice will narrate and explain your character's thoughts, emotions, and how your character reacts to the world around them. Baldur's Gate 3 consists of a deep and branching narrative system, where the story splits in different directions based on your decisions and interactions with other characters. The game's creators believe Baldur's Gate 3 is truly a worthy successor to the previous two games, although it's not really a direct sequel to them. Coming in at number 5, The Legendary World. The game is set in the Forgotten Realms, the world of Faerun, and largely in the city of Baldur's Gate, all created all the way back in 1975 for the original tabletop Dungeons & Dragons by Ed Greenwood. It's a deep and beloved universe that is brought to life unlike it ever has been before. This is truly a next-gen RPG. The city of Baldur's Gate is the crowning location in the game. It's a seamless city in which there are no loading screens between each area. They say it's very immersive, with crowds that react to everything. You can talk to almost anyone, and everyone has a story. Life within the city is heavily influenced by several factions that vary from protectors like the Watch to mercenaries like the Flaming Fist. The city itself is divided into multiple districts, some for the rich, some for the poor, and even communities so poor they only exist outside the protective walls of the city itself. The early access of the game has only revealed about 1/5 of the map, but the full size of it is said to be similar to that of Skyrim, which is pretty huge. What adds to the scope of the world is the fact that dungeons are procedurally generated, so dungeons will be different every single time you play, which is crazy. Number 4, Boundless combat and spells. The combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is entirely turn-based, with over 600 spells and abilities. The game uses the most recent D&D rule set. This may seem outdated to some players, but it is a very specific and detailed system of play that remains enjoyable. The combat is by no means slow or uninteresting. The different archetypes for each class give different ways of attacking within the game. Spells and abilities can be used creatively by players to overcome the various challenges of the game, like dealing damage, healing, buffing allies, manipulating the environment, or influencing characters and creatures through all kinds of magical effects and mechanics. It almost seems like too much, but like so many of the other elements in this game, having so much allows for a deep level of replayability. One of the game's creators spoke of the combat, saying each combat encounter is a puzzle, and each different party is a different set of tools to solve the puzzle. As is traditional with most games, there are 3 difficulty levels: Explorer, which is easy, Balanced, which is normal, and Tactician, which is hard mode. Sliding in at number 3, Forged Relationships. Relationships are an integral part of this game. Your character grows and changes through each of the 3 acts. The decisions you make along the way change the way your relationship flows with other characters as the story progresses. There's a wealth of content here as you explore your relationships and all the side stories that come along with each and every one. The character relationships can range from purely friendly to deeply intimate in all kinds of ways. It should be noted here that this game is absolutely not for kids. Much like real life, how you treat other characters will change the way they behave with you. Some may stay, and some may jump ship and leave you outright. Your decisions on how you interact with others will make all the difference as you progress. They may have their own desires and just make their own decisions. Even if characters you care about leave, there are characters that you can swap in and out later in the game. This element of the game is honestly fascinating. Friends, lovers, enemies, it's a lot. Hopefully people don't neglect their real-life relationships for the ones they create in this game. And at number 2, Advanced Co-op. Another brilliant feature in this game is the co-op multiplayer mode. This is where you gather your party. The player can team up with up to 3 other players, creating a party of 4. Characters are limited to 1 per player, but this is really where the custom creations can really shine through. And yes, you can play with 2 players on the same screen with split-screen co-op. Up to 4 players can be in a party, and you can join at the beginning or during a playthrough. Inventory is shared between players, but thankfully with the option to lock them. All the players in the party have access to the same journal, notes, recipes, etc. During multiplayer, each player can travel solo. Dialogue, cutscenes, and combat encounters can be experienced alone. Each player tracks their relationships and choices independently. But then some cutscenes and any camping require the entire party as you progress, so that will interrupt all the players' individual gameplay at once. When in dialogue decision sections together as a group, the decision on what is said is made by a voting system. In combat, multiple players can take their turns at the same time in certain situations. I have to say, this is probably the most advanced multiplayer co-op RPG gaming I have ever seen. And finally, at number 1, unlimited choices. The most mind-blowing element of this game is choice. I've never seen a game that touts such a thorough and multifaceted choice system. You can choose to be an origin hero that has a handcrafted background, or just play alongside those characters. Create your own character from scratch with what feels like an infinite amount of options, or you can play with the Dark Urge, a fully customizable origin hero with a very dark subplot. With that choice, you'll be faced with dark temptations continuously. The developers call it the dark side of Baldur's Gate, and gave a very clear warning that this option is not for the faint of heart. And if you follow the dark choices, things will get very, very brutal. Then they remind us that it is, in fact, just a game, but they seem genuinely scared of their own game. Beyond your character, every decision defines your legacy within the game, creating good relationships with characters and also creating enemies by going with your gut. Even your choices with other players online or right there with you on your couch will change your experience. No two playthroughs will ever be the same, giving it the kind of open gameplay that is offered in the tabletop version of Dungeons & Dragons. Even if you've never played D&D, having a taste of this kind of gameplay is something that anyone who is a fan of role-playing games should experience on some level. Baldur's Gate 3 is the closest you can get to that in a video game. So, there you have it. The top 10 mind-blowing Baldur's Gate 3 elements. The full release of Baldur's Gate 3 is coming on PC on August 3rd, 2023, and on PS5 on September 6th, 2023. They're going to release it on Xbox as well, but they have not announced a release date for that yet. Well, that's a massive amount of information for such a massive game. So much to talk about, let's talk about it in the comments below. What actually blew your mind on this list? Do you think this game could actually beat Starfield for Game of the Year? Guys, I also want to hear from you about what other videos you'd like to see from me. I want to build this channel as a community, so let me know in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And of course, to see all my latest videos, click subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you again next time on Game List Plus.